Chapter 8. As they headed toward the town, more snow started to fall. It was only light flakes that blew around in the breeze, but enough to make them all feel the extra cold. At first, it melted as soon as it touched them, but they'd also been out at the hut a long time, and then with the digging and everything else, the day was fast running out. While they trudged, none of them talked much. The sun sinking on the horizon, bathing them in a strange glow, and the air growing even colder along with it. The snow grew thicker, but not any faster, sticking to their hair and cloaks, and beginning to form a layer anywhere far enough from their skin. In the distance, a lone wolf howled, beginning to sound familiar. It was the third time she had heard it while out in the forest. Always in the distance, however. It seemed to speak to her. A kindred spirit, perhaps.
"I hate being this cold,"
Thorgrim said eventually, bringing her thoughts back to the present.
"I sometimes wonder if my goddess wishes to teach me something from calling me to such a cold land."
"It's all right. This area isn't like this all the time," Mira replied. "You should see it in the summer. It's one of the most wonderful places in the whole continent in summer."
"You've been here before?" he asked.
She nodded, and Saria wondered if that was going to be it. But Mira eventually tilted her head to one side, looking wistful.
"It was a long time ago," she began. "I couldn't have been more than 7 summers. My tribe was nomadic, all of us dragonborn, and me and my sister had just been, well, we had just discovered we had sorcerer blood in us."
There was a pause, and Saria went to talk, to fill the awkward silence with some kind of question. But Thorgrim lifted his hand just a little, enough that she would see the gesture to not interrupt, but Mira wouldn't. Willing to defer to Thorgrim's skill as a listener, Saria closed her mouth again and continued to trudge.
"Of course, sorcerer blood isn't that strange among my kind. Many of our ancestors merged the 2 bloodlines. Our tribe hadn't seen it in a while, but they accepted it as readily as they could. But others didn't. We tried to hide it in certain places we visited, knowing it would cause issues. But we didn't always hide it as well as we ought."
Mira choked up and snapped her mouth shut for a moment.
"It's a hard burden to bear for one so young,"
Thorgrim said, his voice gentle and full of understanding. Again, Saria kept her mouth shut on her many questions, aware she was getting an unintended lesson on how to truly listen and provide support to someone in pain. Instead, she just thought her questions. Why had the tribe gone places some of their kind weren't welcome? And what had happened to Mira's sister, family, and tribe? Why wasn't she with them now?
"I came here hoping it would be as I remembered. I didn't realize it had such a harsh winter. So maybe some kind of god is trying to teach me a lesson too."
Mira laughed, the melancholy spirit gone. With most of the questions still bouncing around Saria's head, they arrived on the edge of the town. Many of the townspeople still hurried to and fro, some of them smiling at the travelers as if they were friends. It was nice to feel welcome, and Mira even went so far as to smile at all those who didn't as well. Some would then respond, but most didn't if they weren't already inclined. The rest of the townsfolk were too busy with their own lives to even notice the travelers, and as the night continued to creep up, the people around them grew fewer. By the time they were in the center of town, the temple on the other side of the square to the inn, and not far from the mayor's house, darkness was already beginning to shroud the buildings, the snow only reflecting back a minimal amount of starlight through gaps in the clouds. Thankful the snow kept light, Saria hung back as Thorgrim approached the temple. He strode up to the thick oak door with confidence and rapped on it. It boomed under the force of his fists, but silence followed for some time. Letting out a harumph of annoyance, Thorgrim knocked again. Mira grinned when there was still no answer.
"Reckon we'll be here a while?" Mira asked. "I might go seeking that pipe if so."
I'm sure someone inside will be aware of our presence. Something must be happening to hold them back from presenting the usual hospitality my goddess expects from her devout.
Mira only grinned in response as Thorgrim knocked for a third time, beginning to shift from foot to foot, clearly starting to get impatient himself. He was raising his fists to bang with them both and really make some noise when the sound of a bolt moving on the other side came through the door. He lowered his fists just in time. The door opened inwards, scraping along the floor with a horrible noise, just far enough to reveal the sight of a small, mouse-like woman, thin like a willow rod, and wide-eyed at the sight of them. She wore a training habit, but she had a set of keys around her waist and an apron on.
"I'm sorry," she said. "We're not equipped to help travelers at the moment. By my goddess, we would wish to, but we just can't."
"Nonsense,"
Thorgrim said, lifting his arm to reveal a relic of some sort.
"Oh, forgive me, brother," she said. "I understand you would normally wish to seek refuge among our brethren, but I have been instructed to only allow those already acquainted with us in."
"By whom?"
Thorgrim asked, his tone firm, as if this was highly irregular. She seemed to pale at the tone, but she held her ground and didn't open the door farther.
"My previous priest left and instructed me so. It's more than my position is worth to disobey him. I'm sure when our new priest arrives, things will go back to normal."
"Well, I'm among the fourth order of our clerics. I know you wish to obey him, but I outrank him, and when in need cannot be denied. Please, sister, you must admit us."
She hesitated, looking between them.
"I cannot. I'm sorry, brother."
She moved to close the door. It already scraped on the floor as she pulled back and tried to push on it with all her strength, but either by some intervention or out of old age, it stuck fast on the floor, and her body wasn't strong enough to shut it on them. Gently, Thorgrim stepped a little further forward and placed his hand on hers.
"Sister,"
he said, softer than Saria had ever heard him before.
"I understand your desire to obey commands previously given, but it seems either our goddess doesn't want this, or you need a good carpenter. I can aid with both. I assure you that I come on important business, and I'm here to help the town this temple presides over. Your mayor even saw fit to ask me to come aid you. We're allies. Let me prove it."
For a moment the sister shook her head, but another shove on the door still wouldn't shut it. Giving up, she looked between the three of them in turn, her eyes watering up as she did. Eventually, she nodded and stepped back.
"Please, brother, think kindly of me. I only wish to keep this temple safe until I have a priest to serve alongside once more."
"I understand. Why don't you give my friends here a space to rest and a drink each? If a bite can be spared, I'm sure they'd appreciate that as well. But I'm sure you know best what is possible and needed. I'll see about fixing this door before I do anything else."
"Oh, thank you, brother. May the goddess smile upon your heart and bless your path."
Thorgrim smiled at her and nodded at Mira and Saria to follow the sister as she hurried off. Feeling a little nervous, but not wanting to cause any further fuss after they'd barely been admitted, Saria led Mira and followed the sister into the depths of the building. They passed through the main area first, pews lined up along one edge. It wasn't laid out like most temples Saria had been in first, however. There was a lot of water in pools, and little fountains and waterfalls on the other side. It had a gentle noise to it that she immediately found soothing. It didn't ease her soul in the way wind rustling through the trees did, but it still had a calming tone to it. At the far end of the large room was an altar. This was much like she had expected. Draped in cloth, it had holy items laid out on it, a large tome in the middle, and several cups, bowls, and candelabras adorning the rest. All of them were silver or silver-plated, as they shone in the candlelight. All in all, it was a gentle but reverent sight. She'd seen far more wealth inside a temple than this, but if someone was desperate, she could see how the temple might become a target nonetheless. The sister hurried them along to a small side door near the back. Thankfully, this one was lighter and fitted into the hinges far better. It moved effortlessly as she pushed it and revealed a much plainer room, a sitting room of sorts. In there was another sister. She nodded at their guide, then glanced at Mira and Saria before her mouth hung open. For a moment, she stared, before she seemed to realize, shake her head, and close her mouth. The sister ignored her entirely, already opening the next door. It led to a small dining area, one long table spread across the middle of the room, a bench on either side.
"Please rest here. I'll have one of the sisters bring you something to fill your stomachs and provide for your weary bones. It will be plain fare, but I hope you will understand the intended generosity that comes along with it."
"Thank you, sister," Saria said as she sat herself down on the bench. "We're grateful for the kind hospitality in what is clearly a difficult time for you and your brethren. I hope we can also provide aid where needed." "Yes, this town seems to be in a bit of a bind. We'll do what we can before we move on. Might as well. Not like we've got anything better to do."
Mira plunked herself down, grinning as she did. The sister nodded, clearly not sure what to say to any of this. Instead, she gave a small sort of curtsy and hurried back the way she'd come. They were only alone for a few seconds before the sister they'd just passed also appeared, gave them a brief, almost frightened look, and then hurried through yet another door without saying a word.
"These sisters aren't the conversational type, are they?"
Mira said, when they were alone yet again.
"No, but Thorgrim seems to think this is a great place." "Aye, but he got excited about a piece of metal set in the ground. He's not right in the head, that one."
Saria laughed, but you could sort of see the point. Silence threatened to grow, so she took the plunge to try and keep the conversation going.
"What was that thing? Anton seemed to be concerned about it too." "Yes, I noticed that as well."
Mira looked thoughtfully for a moment, before launching into an explanation of what had happened while Saria had been gone with Andorn and then up a tree.
"I think it protects something?"
she asked, when Mira was done.
"I think so, or guards something. I'm not sure we should be messing with it, but the dwarf tried to open it once we'd got the whole thing dug round and cleaned off, and it melted the shovel he was using." "The whole shovel?" "Pretty much. It was like acid or something equally nasty. Only ever seen something so vicious once before. A mage could put this chemical on blades, arrowheads, and traps that when it came into contact with other objects, or people, it sort of dissolved them, fizzing away and making smoke like some horrible flameless fire."
Saria nodded. She knew what Mira was describing and shuddered at a similar memory.
"That's what Thorgrim came here for?" she asked. "Yes, something to remove it, or neutralize it. I didn't understand the babble, but Andorn did. Jarlen complained that it was effort he wasn't sure was worth it, or that we were getting paid for."
Saria laughed at the description of Jarlen's annoyance until Andorn pointed out that the sort of door they were trying to get through usually had some kind of riches as well on the other side of it.
"That sounds like Jarlen,"
Saria said, laughing. Before they could talk any more, the second sister came back, carrying a tray with 2 plates on it. The plates held bread and a bowl full of a sort of broth. It looked appealing if only for the hot steam that could be seen rising off the tops of the bowls. Saria had been cold since they'd left the inn that morning.
Thank you, sister, the pair of them said in unison, before grinning at each other. The sister still didn't speak, backing up and curtsying before she left it to them. Saria handed Mira a plate, before taking another herself and grabbing the bread. Although she burnt her mouth, Saria devoured the bread, each bite dripping with hot broth, before lifting a spoon and trying to do the same with the remaining liquid in the bowl. It was still so hot she had to slow and blow it a little. But Mira didn't do either and wolfed the lot down. Saria looked at her, an eyebrow raised at her ability not to feel the heat. "It's the fire breath," Mira explained. "I don't feel the heat in quite the same way." It made sense, and with that said, Saria returned her concentration to her own dish. No sooner had they both finished when the sister reappeared with a third and placed it on the other side of the table. Thorgrim appeared before she could leave again, making an explanation unnecessary. He flopped down and also ate too fast, clearly burning himself as well. They laughed again, and even the sister seemed to light up in mirth. She clapped a hand over her mouth, however, keeping any sound from escaping, and then she hurried away, as if she was determined not to interact in any other way.
"Vow of silence," he said, "and I've got what I need from the store cupboard. We should go to the mayor and get a few hours' sleep and get that pipe as soon as it's decent to wake the smith. Thankfully he'll be up early for the horses. Sister said that the farmers always bring the ones who need it most early on the morrow."
Saria nodded as Mira yawned. Sleep sounded good, and their beds at the inn were more than soft enough after the road. They left as soon as Thorgrim was ready, heading to the mayor's. Seeming to lead the party more naturally, Thorgrim knocked on the mayor's door as well, also needing to knock twice before anyone would open the door. By now, it was completely dark, and the snow was thicker again, swirling in the flickering lamplight of the square. Saria was shivering before they were admitted inside, the butler taking one look at them and opening the door.
"Wait here for a moment. The mayor is currently occupied, but he'll want to know how your investigation goes."
The butler walked off before any of them could consider objecting or offering any explanation. They were left there waiting for only a couple minutes before the butler beckoned for them to follow him towards the study. They reached the door at a similar time to the mayor, who pulled a key from his pocket, unlocked the room, and led everyone inside. Only once she had stamped through the door and glanced behind did Saria notice that the butler had snuck off while they weren't looking.
"Please tell me what's been going on." "We've not found the person behind it all yet," Thorgrim said, "but they've got buying power, and they're not sparing it. We've dealt with about 10 thugs today, all of them in some sort of hut in the forest, part way up the side of the mountain, near the mountain pass. They're up to something, and we've got a couple of avenues to explore further, but no one should get mugged or bothered on the road any time soon."
That's good news of a sort. Any man no longer hindering the safe passage of my citizens is a weight off my shoulder. But that's a lot of people, especially if it's not all as you suggest. This is a far bigger operation than I suspected.
The mayor sighed, seeming to age as his shoulders sagged. For a moment, Saria felt sorry for him, and she almost expected Thorgrim to reach out and pat his shoulder or something, in much the same way he had comforted Mira earlier, and then the sister. Instead, he grunted.
"It is what it is. We'll deal with it, and we'll find out what they're planning. We're going to need to follow a couple of leads, however. I understand that you want us to be careful. We've risked our lives out there, and in the freezing cold, too."
If you're asking for some kind of definitive pay, state your price, and let's not beat around the bush. I may understand the priority your help represents, but I'm still a busy man.
"We'd like double what you offered us before," Mira said very matter-of-factly. It was all Saria could do to not react as if that wasn't what she had been expecting. Of course, none of them had told her a thing, and Andorn hadn't mentioned it either. Did he know? Or were the two travelers and adventurers with her trying to get more money for themselves without the others knowing? The mayor sighed and sat back a moment, studying them. Eventually, he nodded.
"All right, I am a reasonable man, and since you've dealt with a significant portion of that threat already, if you can give me some proof, I'll furnish you with more money." "Thought you might ask us that,"
Thorgrim replied as he reached into a pocket. He pulled out a handful of letters, some of them a bit crumpled, and dropped them on the desk.
"The writing isn't that great in some cases, but these letters discussing disruptions to the town, attacks on the people, and farm animals to boot."
The mayor immediately reached for them, suddenly far more serious and concerned as he quickly read them. Not long later, he nodded.
"You're right. Someone far bigger is behind this. Keep investigating, and you'll keep being rewarded."
The mayor reached into a drawer beside him and clearly counted out coins they couldn't see. He then grabbed a small pouch from his pocket, tipped several large coins into it, and held it out. "Thank you, sir," Mira replied as she took it. "We'll report back the day after tomorrow. We'll have tracked at least one of our leads by then."
"Not tomorrow?" he asked.
Thorgrim shook his head.
"We can't get to the bottom of the next development till a little more time has passed, and we don't want to make conjectures we can't back up. I hope you can understand our desire to do the job properly. My goddess would frown upon my actions if I was reckless with another's fate."
The mayor looked like he might object again, but eventually he nodded and waved them out. Saria relaxed as she followed her friends out of the house and back over to the inn. She was beginning to grow concerned about several elements of the party and the situation, but at least the inn rooms were free for now. Of course, they were getting to sleep in luxury that night as well, while the rest of the party was out in the cold. As Saria and Mira settled down to sleep, Saria found herself thinking about the two men on the other side of the forest, now miles away. Both of them were interesting characters, and each had a sort of charm, but she couldn't decide what she truly thought of either of them, just that they'd made her life far more interesting than it had been in months. But did she want this kind of interesting? Only time would tell.